In 1962, the U.S. Supreme Court decided to ban school-sponsored prayer, saying that it violated the First Amendment. The very next year, the court decided to ban school-sponsored Bible reading. In 1987, the court ruled that it was unconstitutional to teach students about creationism as opposed to evolution. With every passing day, our society drifts farther and farther away from God and His Word. People are trying to get the phrase, "In God we trust," removed from our currency. They're trying to get one nation under God removed from the Pledge of Allegiance. This world is full of non-believers who will take any chance they can get to erase God from this country and to mock those who believe in Him. It takes a lot of strength and courage to be a Christian in this day and age. The world will try to get in your head and make you believe what they want you to. But through God, we can find the strength and courage to stand up against the world and live a spiritual and faithful life. Today, for a few moments, I would like to take you back to September 26, 1983, the day the world almost ended. By the 1980s, a Cold War had been ongoing between the Soviet Union and the United States for over 3 years. Both nations had enough nuclear missiles to wipe out all of humanity. Tensions were at an all-time high, both nations were paranoid, and they were waiting for the other to make the first move. Humanity was at the brink of extinction. On September 26, 1983, the fate of the world lay in the hands of one man, the Soviet Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. Petrov was the on-duty officer at the command center for the Oko nuclear early warning system when the system reported that a nuclear missile had been launched by the United States, followed by up to 5 more. Petrov's orders were to launch missiles back, but his decision to disobey orders against Soviet military protocol is credited with having prevented a counterstrike against the U.S. Historians say that if this counterstrike had been launched, it would have resulted in an all-out nuclear war, which would have very likely led to the extinction of humanity. But thanks to the bravery and courageousness of Stanislav Petrov, the world did not end on that fateful day. Stanislav Petrov was willing to put his job and perhaps even his life at risk in order to do what he thought was right and save the world. God calls on us to be strong and courageous as well, even if that means going against what the world and its temptations tell us to do. Acts chapter 5, verse 29 tells us that we ought to obey God rather than men. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel chapter 3 is a perfect example of somebody being strong and courageous enough to stand up against the world and follow God, even in the face of death. The story begins when the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, decides to make a golden idol of colossal proportions. He then proclaims that when the people of Babylon hear the sounds of trumpets, harps, and flutes, they are to bow down before the 6-cubit high idol and worship. Those who did not would be cast into a fiery furnace where they were sure to meet an agonizing death. One day, the music began to play. As the people fell to their knees, 3 Jews named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remained standing. When the king heard this, he was furious and called them to come to him. When they came to him, he asked if it was true that they did not serve his gods and refused to worship the idol he had set up. He warned them once more that the punishment would be a fiery death. Then the 3 said to him that if he threw them into the fiery furnace, God was sure to deliver them from it. But it's what they say after in verse 18 that is truly an example of courage. They say, "But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Now, at the end of the story, God did save them. But how powerful is it that they understood there's a chance he might not, and yet they still refused to give in to the king's demand, even in the face of death. We must be the same way. We will go through trials and tribulations, but we must always stand up for God. We must remain strong and courageous, even when we are scared. Because with God, we can stand up against fear and be strong and courageous. We can stand up against what the world tells us to do, and instead do what God and the Bible tells us to do. Every day, the world becomes more and more hostile towards Christians, and it takes a ton of strength and courage to remain strong in the faith. Since the beginning, men have lacked strength and courage. Only a few have chosen to stand up for God, and it's those few who have really made a difference. What if Petrov had given into the pressure and pushed the button? What if Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had given into the pressure and bowed to a false god? The world is pressuring us every day and every night. Will you give into that pressure, or will you remain strong and courageous in the Lord? I challenge each and every one of us in this room today to stand with and for God and have the strength and courage to do the right thing.